Flying brings people together, and that's truly the case for my next guest, who is a frequent traveler to Mexico. Today, he is going to share the story of why he flies both domestic and international, what it's like to travel to Mexico during the pandemic, and how his flying has changed in 2020. Hi everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to be talking to a traveler who is very different from the other travelers that I've interviewed in my most recent series, because this person is actually traveling internationally. Not only is he traveling internationally, he's traveling internationally during a very difficult time. We're right in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. As a matter of fact, during the time of this video, cases are at an all-time high. He's going to talk about his experience traveling internationally. And just like the other people that I've interviewed on my particular channel, we are also going to talk about the fact that things have changed tremendously and what people are doing to cope with the changes and what are their thoughts for the future. So today, I would like to introduce to you Jay Reinholt. Jay, welcome to my channel. How are you today?
Thank you, Peter. I'm very well. Thank you. It's very nice to be here. I look forward to speaking with you about this.
Definitely. I'm really excited to have you on board. As you know, as the whole world knows, things are very difficult in terms of travel, as well as a lot of other aspects of just living normal lives. But we're going to talk specifically today about what you've been doing, what changes you have been making throughout the entire coronavirus pandemic. So I understand that you've actually left the country quite a few times during the pandemic. So I'd like to talk to you about how is that possible. For most people, they've actually cut back on their international travel completely. And a lot of international travel that I have seen has been very limited leisure travel. There's a handful of countries that people can go to where they really don't have to worry about things too much. So we'll talk about the country that you go to, how often you go there, and how you're able to do so. So I'll just get started by asking you, where are you right now? Where are you based out of?
So, Peter, I'm based out of Omaha, Nebraska. I've lived here for the last 5 years. Well, yeah, 5 years in October. And I travel frequently for a living throughout the United States and internationally. Well, I did a lot of that pre-COVID. During the middle of COVID right now, I don't travel for work as of yet, but I'm traveling for leisure purposes because my husband is Mexican and he lives in Mexico City. So we have a house here in Omaha, and then we also have a residence in Mexico City where he works.
Oh, wow. So he's spending most of the time down there and you're up here in the United States.
Yes. So we lived together for about 8 years. And then for work requirements, I came back up to our house here. He's a concert musician, so he's a professional pianist. And so his work is in Mexico City, as well as he's a professor at the National Conservatory of Music.
Oh, wow. Is he still working right now during this period?
Yes, but he's only working remotely. So he holds all of his sessions with his students via Zoom or YouTube, I think.
Okay. Yep. I've seen a couple of videos on YouTube with musicians playing kind of in a group session. You have all the different windows out there. It sounds pretty good. So I'm glad that is able to work out for him.
I think he's recording a concert right now, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, make sure you send me the link so I can watch it once it does go live.
Oh, I will. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about your travels to Mexico. First of all, let's say if I don't have any ties with Mexico at all. If I wanted to go to Mexico right now, would I be able to do so? And are there any restrictions that are in place?
So officially, it's supposed to be necessary travel, but unofficially, Mexico is letting everybody into the country. Via air. Via land, it's a different story. Now, I'm a permanent resident of Mexico, but that does not play into account for being able to enter by air. You book your reservation, you check in as you normally do, all masked up and whatever, and you fly in. You get in to Mexico City, and it's the same deplaning process and the same going through customs and getting your bags.
Really?
Yes. And I've done this in Mexico City, Puerto Vallarta, and Cancun.
Oh, wow. Now, when you went to those coastal cities, were you just going there from Mexico City, or were you coming from the United States?
Both. So I have flown into Mexico City 3 times, I think, during the pandemic. And I think I've flown once or twice directly to Puerto Vallarta and once or twice to Cancun.
Oh, wow. That's amazing. Yeah, I actually did hear that some of the coastal cities are kind of popular these days for travelers, but I didn't realize it was actually that easy to get to those destinations from the United States by air.
It really actually was very easy by air. The most difficult part is depending on what they call it, the semáforo, which means stoplight, is what that state or region is. And they go green, yellow, orange, red. And then based on what their color is, they limit the occupancy of hotels. So sometimes you might have a hotel issue. Just need to make sure that the hotel has the right occupancy available for you to book and get into the hotel and stay.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that they actually divided like that. I kind of just thought it was just listed as one country. And, even in the United States, each state is different, where we have different rules. It is a little bit challenging living in New York City to travel to different places. We used to have a 14-day quarantine rule where you return back home into New York or just visit New York. You have to remain quarantined for 14 days. That rule has actually since changed, where you now have to get tested 3 days within 3 days of your departure to New York, and then 4 days after your arrival in New York City in quarantine. And then if it comes back negative, you're free to move about for the entire state of New York, not just New York City. Are there any rules like that for Mexico at all, or?
At the present moment, no, none that I'm aware of. So what I found is generally, though, depending on where you're going to in Mexico and what part of the city you're going into, more people wear masks than I've actually had seen in the United States. But if you get into the more rural parts of the country, then you see less mask usage.
Really? Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And when you generally go, I'm assuming in the larger metropolis of Mexico City?
Correct.
Okay.
We live right off of the major street called Reforma, and we're a half a block from the intersection of that and Insurgentes. Mm-hmm. So we are right in the middle of all the action in Mexico City.
Oh, that's great. And how often were you going down there prior to February or March of this year, prior to the pandemic?
I would generally try between 2 and 4 times, and he would come up once or twice. Before this, sometimes it had been as much as 6 months because I was so busy for work that I couldn't get down to go visit him. I've seen him more during the pandemic because I can't travel to visit my clients or to visit my operations centers. So I've burned through 1 million Delta miles and 1 million Marriott points visiting him and going to the beach.
Wow. So you have the time since you can't travel domestically. Well, you could, but you just don't have the demand for it for work. So that brings me to the question about status and how you actually get to your diamond level of status on Delta each year. So it seems like the last year, prior to this year, you did a lot of domestic travel and a few Mexican flights to try to get to that level. Is that correct?
Yes. And for the previous year, I usually travel to India 2 to 5 times a year.
Oh, that'll help.
It's a big mix between domestic and international. Before I had this job about 5 years ago, I really actually relied on the Delta Reserve card and hitting the spending threshold to help me push me over the diamond edge. And
normally, do you have any struggles in trying to get to that level of Diamond Medallion, or does it automatically come naturally? Me personally, I have a struggle each year. I have to add on at least 1 or 2 international flights just to get to that particular level.
For the last 5 years, I have not had to make a mileage run, which is good and bad. I miss mileage runs. I think they're a lot of fun. It puts you back out there in someplace different usually.
It does. Although in my case, I just went someplace different and came back the same exact day.
Yeah. I try to stay. If I do a mileage run, I usually try to stay for a couple, 3 or 4 days if I have the luxury to do that.
I just didn't have the time to do that. So probably maybe a little bit more time nowadays without having to report to an office every day.
Very true.
When I did it, it was basically a quick trip. It was just a transcon and back across to the United States again. To New York again, just to get the extra miles. So you're very, very loyal with Delta. Do you fly any other carriers at all? Do you do anything with Air Mexico at all in your flights to Mexico?
Yes. So when the pandemic really hit hard and Delta cut back its schedules to get to anywhere besides Mexico City, Delta routed you through to Mexico City, and you were then forced to take Aeromexico. Mm-hmm. Aeromexico had no seat blocking. Mm-hmm. Every flight was 100% full that I went to both beaches. So that was interesting to me. What was also very surprising in a good way, when the flight attendants asked for social distancing for deplaning, people paid attention and did it. In the past, you'd hear people clicking their seatbelts as soon as the wheels went down. We hadn't even hit the brakes, and people were standing up while we were taxiing. None of that happened on my last 5 trips.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, it's great for making sure that there's a lot of compliance within the aircraft itself. The airlines have got these great policies and great procedures out there for cleaning aircraft, but it's ultimately up to the people to be able to adhere to that, with social distancing. Are the airports in Mexico crowded? At least the one trip I did during the summer, there's markers all over the ground telling you stay this many feet apart from the next person, but I really didn't have to use them because people were very well distanced because there weren't a lot of people there altogether. What's it like in the airport situation going to Mexico or in Mexico and at any connection airports you may be in? Mm-hmm.
It's a lot less crowded than it used to be. Mexico City is probably about, I would guess the last trip I had, which was just about 3 weeks ago, half of capacity of where they used to be.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that I found very interesting, though, is, we go 6 feet apart. Mexico as a country is 1.5 meters or 5 feet apart. And I still don't know why.
So it's not a one-for-one translation, basically, of the, yeah, I've seen that, meters don't always equate to feet all the time.
Right.
Throughout many countries in the world, they have these different numbers, but, what does it mean in terms of 6 feet separation? You kind of have to do the calculations to figure it out. It is quite interesting to see that there. What's it like on the beach nowadays in Mexico? Are people, maskless, which is I'm assuming they are if they're going in the water? Are people really crowded into the hotels in Mexico, where the hotels are available? I know you mentioned there are some limits into the hotels there, but are the restaurants open? What's it like nowadays there?
It's a very different scene. So the beaches are paradise. Normally on certain days and weekends, they'd be packed with people, especially right now with the winter season here in the States. It's probably 30-40% full, period. Restaurants in the towns that you go to, the smaller restaurants, they're still open. They're doing their best to stay open. There's a really nice place that I like called Joe Jack's in Puerto Vallarta, and he was open. I was impressed that he's also still serving food for homeless people and handing out boxes. But you've also seen a lot of businesses that are closed due to the pandemic and they didn't make it. Most people are not wearing masks when they're on the beach. And hotels, they're also empty. They're begging for people to come down. I paid $70 a night for the Marriott in Puerto Vallarta, and I'm an Ambassador Elite, and I got upgraded to the presidential suite for a week.
Mm-hmm.
It was great.
Do you plan on going down there anytime soon? So you are in Omaha. Omaha is right in the middle of the country, and as we all know, at the current time, there is a major COVID-19 outbreak happening right, surrounding you. It may not necessarily be in your town, but you are surrounded by some pretty bad news. So, what is your plans for, let's say, the next month or so? Are you plan on leaving at all, or are you going to mostly remain at home?
I have a trip booked, but unfortunately, my husband was going to actually play at a private concert, and the city of Mexico City, has clamped back down again, and so now they're not allowing public gatherings as they were going to be. So I'm canceling that trip and actually just booked him on a mileage ticket coming up to visit me. He'll be here in about 3 weeks.
Oh, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
Very nice. And what's the routing from Mexico? Do you go through Atlanta to get up?
Yes, for this trip, he's going Mexico City, Atlanta to Omaha, and it's pretty decent. It was pretty decent flights, and it was about 77,000 sky miles.
Oh, very nice. Good. So you were able
in first class too.
Oh, excellent. That worked out very well.
Yeah.
So when you're traveling, let's talk a little about the flight experience for yourself when you're traveling domestically or to Mexico, which is again a short trip. It's not a domestic flight, but it's not that far away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming you're mostly on narrow body aircraft.
Yes. No wide body experience this year at all. Kind of sad.
Yeah. So what is the experience like for you? Delta, as we all know, has made tremendous changes in terms of the boarding process, in terms of cleaning aircraft on a regular basis. What are your thoughts on that? My personal thoughts was I loved it. I love the boarding process. I love boarding from the rear forward. I was booked in the first class cabin, and they made an announcement saying that diamonds in first class can board at any time during the boarding process. Honestly, I didn't do it because I really enjoyed the fact that everyone boarded from rear forward, and I made sure I was the last person on the airplane, and I actually felt like $1 million that way. I felt like I was someone special, kind of like a secret passenger who, instead of just hanging out, on the airplane, sitting there looking at everybody while you're boarding, was the last one on, door closed, and I was out. Now, obviously, you can tell that I'm a little bit of a germaphobe, so I also like that. I like doing that just for the fact of social distancing and being away from others. What are your thoughts on that process? Do you think it's something you'd like to have Delta continue on for eternity, or do you prefer the old way where status really indicates when you board?
it seems logical to me to do reverse boarding, especially for onboarding, and because we follow that process when you leave the plane just because of who gets up first.
Mhm.
But that has changed. Now boarding is now back to zones. They are not reverse boarding anymore. Yes, that changed I noticed on my last trip, and I'm like, what happened? And
Wow.
I don't remember Aeromexico ever going to that process, which surprised me because Delta owns 49% of them. When you arrive at the airport, so you're wearing your mask, and you're essentially going to have the mask on, especially if you're going to Mexico City, for about 11 hours. There's just not a good way from a Delta perspective to get in directly to Mexico, as we all know. So you're wearing a mask all the time. From a service standpoint, as you know, on the plane, you're handed the plastic bag, which contains the 8-ounce Dasani water, Cheez-Its, and a Biscoff, and a sanitary wipe and a napkin in the bag, and you're given the gel when you on board. And then in first class, and now in Comfort Plus, Delta is serving beer and wine and extra water. That's it. No soda, no nothing, no mixed drinks. On a longer flight of 3 hours, they'll give you the flight fuel box, and you get two choices. The flight attendants are still friendly. They're good. They actually are. Most of them, they're bored. A lot of them want service to come back, but they need to find a hygienic way to do that. And again, the airports, it's mask all the time, and people are mostly social distancing. I've noticed, I think in my own local airport, though, they pulled the seat restriction at the gate, and I don't remember last time seeing that this seat has been restricted for social distancing. But in Mexico City Airport, I remember seeing it still.
Interesting. I was not aware of that the zone boarding coming back, but I did read actually that Delta is now going to be extending the middle seat being empty, I think, until March of next year. So,
yep,
they are the only airline that is going to be doing that. So, I'm a fan of it, of course, and even during who likes someone sitting next to you on an airplane, no matter what, basically, especially if you're traveling alone. So.
That's true. And I forgot the one other thing that when you're describing the reverse boarding being so popular, one of the best parts about it that we luck into is that because they're restricting first class to 50%, you're going to have room for your overhead even if you are the last person with two carry-ons.
Right. And I did think about that as special as it made me feel during this process. When they do go back to packing in the first class cabin, and if I'm the last person on, and I've been especially in the first row where you can't even stow anything in the seat under the seat in front of you because there is none. Where's my bag going to go? And is that going to? Because I've often got tight connections that I have to make sometimes. I want to make sure my bag also makes it with me too. So I often just don't even bring a bag with me, a check bag, of course, because I just want to make sure it's with me. Once I get off the airplane, I can just go about my own way. So things have definitely changed a lot like that. What are your thoughts? Do you think they should bring back full meal service on the planes?
I think so. I've been in contact with, I know her casually, Allison, the senior VP of in-flight services at Delta. And they just did a study through the Mayo Clinic about what their process was and what their to-be process could look like. And through some email communication, they're hoping they get to trial something in she said early of next year. So I'm hoping it's in January, not in March. I would like to see something come back. I mean, I can go get my food and bring my own, but in many airports, a lot of the concession stands are not open. So you can't buy food to bring it with you. And I found that to be the case, not so much so in hub airports in Atlanta, but in smaller areas, if you get like in Puerto Vallarta or in Cancun or even Omaha.
Yeah, I did see in the few airport experiences that I did have over the summer that most things were closed. And, what I didn't like was also there were some restaurants that were open and everyone was just crowded into those restaurants.
Yes.
So I made sure I stayed away from those particular restaurants. It actually would be nice if they would open up a few more dining places so that you can kind of spread the people around so that it's not limited to one particular thing only. So
I agree.
Absolutely. And of course, that'll help bring some jobs back too. And I think people would actually, patronize them also because, there's so much variety. You have something in mind and you just don't want to be limited to, a hamburger basically, at one restaurant only. So it's absolutely something that really needs to come back soon because some of these, people are really suffering with their jobs at this point.
Yes. And if somebody's at the airport and willing to travel, that means they're most likely willing to dine as well. So it makes perfect sense to me that they could hopefully, as we start to fill up capacity on planes and airports, that they start to open up the restaurants and also, but still allow the social distancing for safety purposes.
Mhm. What about the Sky Clubs? Have you spent some time in the Sky Clubs, and what are they doing for food now?
Everything is prepackaged. So I've been to the F concourse, the B concourse in Atlanta, and the new Salt Lake City Sky Club.
Oh, you have.
Yes, I like the new Salt Lake City concourse or airport. The airport's long. They have people movers in the middle. The Sky Club is tremendous. Um, the people that work there are very kind, but all food options are prepackaged. Trying to think about. I believe they were serving now in cups of glass, not plasticware all the time now, which is good. It was limited, but I believe they're working now through. I didn't think they're going to go into where they have people serving you from the prepared buffet once they migrate away from prepared or prepackaged goods.
Mhm.
So I think that's the next step that's going to be coming through the clubs as they can get that working.
Yeah, I think they're starting to do that on cruise ships now in the buffets, where you're not allowed to touch anything, but someone else will actually serve you the food.
That is what happened while we were in a stay in Puerto Vallarta at the Marriott. So they have a giant restaurant that was a giant buffet area. And before, you just ordered, you had a menu and you ordered and they brought it out to you. And then in the middle of our stay, the sneeze guards went up and then they had the stations manned with people cooking. But you ordered what you want and they plated it on for you instead of you plating it yourself. So that is the next step for maintaining quality and cleanliness.
Yeah, and even with the airline food, it's very rare that they do plating, except you're kind of on a Delta One flight in the Delta One cabin. But even in the first class in some Delta flights, most of the food is actually already prepared for you. All I can remember domestically is them really serving bread afterwards. So all they would really need to do in those cases is just put the bread on the tray to begin with, and then you're all set.
Or eliminate the bread.
Eliminate the bread, exactly. The bread can be it's a little bit difficult to even use the bread on the airplane because you got to make sure your hands are clean, especially now. Got to cut it and put the butter on. It's a little bit too much.
And 10 minutes later, that bread's stale anyway. So to me, it's not worth the calories or the carbs.
Exactly. Right. Have you flown in the Delta One cabin at all, especially maybe in your trips to India at all? Did you get that opportunity?
I have not flown Delta One to India. I've flown Delta One to Amsterdam, and I got the Airbus A350.
Oh, you're so lucky.
That was unbelievable. It was a great experience. I liked it. We got the A330 going over to Europe, so we went to Spain and Morocco this year in February and made it just back before the closing of the world.
Lucky at that point, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so, and it's still a great experience. I look forward to doing it again. Again, I haven't done it post-pandemic or during pandemic or post-pandemic. I don't know if I'll be able to or if I have a desire to.
So if you're going to a country like Morocco where Delta doesn't fly to, are you taking a SkyTeam connecting at an international Delta/KLM Air France hub to get there?
So actually, we were in Madrid, and we went from Madrid from there. And so our only option was Ryanair or Royal Air Maroc. So I chose Royal Air Maroc. It was not a bad experience. I will say that, so the flight's an hour and 15 minutes long. We got served a hot meal. You can't get a domestic carrier to give you a fruit and cheese plate in the United States in first class on an hour-long flight. And they served it was an Embraer Air 190, and they served the entire flight food.
Wow, on a smaller airplane too. Wow, that's amazing. And that was in the first class cabin?
We were in coach.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I automatically thought it was first class when you said it.
It was going to cost another $300 for us to go. And I'm like, this is not worth that. I can't. So I pre-picked our seats and put us in the bulkhead and coach, and we had more room. We were great.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, that's fantastic because you just don't get that experience at all. I've been on many 1-hour flights and it's mostly just something to drink and, the cookies basically.
Yeah, I was impressed.
Yeah, definitely. So when you took that trip, you flew on a different carrier. So obviously you weren't staying within the SkyTeam network. You may have just not been able to because of the circumstances. When you're flying domestically, do you normally just try to stay within one network on Delta or, SkyTeam Delta is the United States only, but will you only stay on Delta or Air Mexico, or will you try other carriers at all, like United, American, or JetBlue or anything else?
Pre-COVID, I cheated on Delta once, and I think I flew United. Post-COVID, because of scheduling and price, I flew on United 2 times out of the 3 trips I've flown out of the 5 total.
During the pandemic?
Yes, during the pandemic.
Oh,
I did
wow.
pay for first class with United, and there were two reasons why: the price of the trip, and it was only one connection instead of two. So during COVID, especially when it was hitting hard, and it was up until the previous trip, to get to Mexico or to get to Puerto Vallarta, I'd have to go Omaha to Atlanta, Atlanta to Mexico City, Mexico City to Puerto Vallarta, or Mexico City to Cancun.
Mm.
Delta had cut its flights to the periphery cities of Mexico. With United in first class, again, the ticket price at that time was hit or miss, but it was about half the price of what Delta was, and I went right through Houston.
Mhm.
It was faster, and quite honestly, United was still serving drinks,
Mhm.
but they weren't seat blocking. But
You
I
had
was
someone next to you.
I wore my mask and I used my gel.
Yeah. So you felt comfortable with United?
I did. The plane was clean. The people were nice. Most everybody was wearing their masks as they were supposed to. You might feel a little more comfortable not with a seatmate, but I made the choice, and I felt comfortable if I could sit next to somebody, wear a mask, and still have dinner. At the same point, I could sit on a plane next to somebody with my mask on most of the time
Right.
and have my gel with me.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a very personal choice, and so I don't criticize anybody for the choice that they make if they say I'm not comfortable with that at all.
Absolutely, because I'm not comfortable.
And I understand completely. It's good to have these discussions.
Absolutely. No, what I like about, talking to different people is that there's so many different points of view. And for my viewers out there, if you watch my previous video, you'll see that I was talking to someone who, 2 videos ago, I believe it was, who basically did not have the pandemic affect him at all. He is primarily a domestic traveler going from the East Coast out west, and nothing has changed whatsoever. Basically, he's keeping the same amount of flights, and it's mostly personal travel because he's got people to see on the other side of the country, and nothing. No differences at all. The only difference is that basically he has to wear a mask, and he's not getting the meal service once he does get upgraded
Yep.
into first class, and basically getting the well, having to deal with all the COVID situations, all the restrictions, but in terms of frequency, very, very little. He's had limited business travel, but his personal travel, which he did primarily, is really unchanged, and he's probably going to be able to make it to Diamond status again. Well, he definitely would for next year, based upon what he did, but of course, Delta extended status a year, but some of the miles will probably even carry over for him so that the year after. Now, of course, the airlines, at least Delta Airlines, has not really, at this point, during the time of this recording of this video, has not mentioned what they're going to do for 2022 just yet. 2021, we all know that everything just flows right over. So whatever your status is, silver, gold, platinum, diamond, you're the same thing for the next year. What are your personal thoughts on what you think the airline should do for the next year? Extend status, lower the thresholds? What's your take on that?
It could be a combination of either. I just read that United had lowered the threshold. I think that was for 2022 status qualifying.
Mm-hmm.
What an airline's going to do is really going to be dependent upon vaccine availability and vaccine usage in the United States, in my opinion. So as we know, we have the two vaccines, Pfizer and Moderna, coming out, but those general population isn't going to get that till March, April, or May. That's going to impact travel. People will not be traveling because of it again. So it's not going to open up business travel. And the only thing really that will go is some leisure travel.
Yeah.
Each airline, I think Delta's, hopefully they're going to come up with something unique. Unfortunately, as we've discussed privately, I think Delta seems to have been following United recently in some of its steps or its announcements and enhancements versus being a leader in the industry. I'm hoping that turns around again, even though I do value Delta's safety commitment.
Absolutely. Yep. The Delta Care Standard. I cannot believe how many emails I received when this whole pandemic began, and even throughout the pandemic. I think even today I received them. I actually didn't even look at it because there's so many of them. I think I saw something in my inbox from Delta about cleanliness, and I got the message already. And I am so confident in Delta, in what they've been doing between their flights, their sanitizing of the aircraft, and really, even their announcements on the few flights that I did take, just emphasizing the wearing of masks and social distancing. It was very, very impressive. Absolutely. So you fly a lot. is aviation something that you've always been interested in, or did you gain an interest in flying? For me personally, it's been a lifelong ambition to always fly a lot, and I have a huge interest in aviation. What about yourself? What's your personal story in terms of, your liking to this industry? It looks like you have actually a picture on the wall there. Oh, look at your shirt. Oh, you like aviation. You like airports.
And I'm sorry, I cut you off. Yeah, that picture is a lithograph or a copy of the one that's actually in the Delta Sky Club when they had the Ski Club soft opening. I happened to be there and was in, and then got the artist to sign it and then framed it.
Oh, cool. Very nice. So is this something that you really enjoy doing, or is it something that you're just out of obligation? You need to get to Mexico for personal reasons. You need to travel throughout the United States for work. Is it something that you would always desire to do, or is it just something that you just kind of have to do?
It's something I love to do. I think my first plane was a 747 when my dad was in the military, and so I'm an adult son of an Air Force officer, retired. And my first plane ride was to Germany in a 747. I believe it was a 747, and I would have been 2 years old. Mm-hmm. And then I got to actually fly on Delta One on their 747 before they retired them. That was phenomenal. But I love to fly. I've worked in industries that have supported airlines before. So I actually was a reservations agent for People Express Airlines.
I remember people.
Really going back in the day, and then eventually I became a customer service manager, not employed by them, working for another company for People Express. And I was actually in charge of finding lost kids and lost bags in Newark, our hub. And I did that here out of Omaha, Nebraska.
Oh, wow.
And then when I lived on the East Coast, there was a short-lived airline called Independence Air. And I also worked for another company that Independent sourced its reservations to.
Yeah, we made out of Dulles, correct?
Yes. Yeah, they were...
J200s.
Yes, that Satan's Chariot. Yep. So we had about 83 of them in the fleet. Yep. Unfortunately, that airline only lasted for 18 months, but Independence Air was a great airline. I think they were the ones that pioneered the check-in kiosk.
Oh, really?
Huh. I remember reading something about that. So, I worked there with that airline for 18 months and loved it. So it's a passion of mine. I also like details, but I've been traveling for forever. So before I was a loyal Delta customer, I gave American 700,000 miles, and I'm at 1.8 million with Delta right now. So I like to travel.
And those are actually flown miles, correct?
Yes.
So hopefully soon, if things get better, you'll be a 2 million miler.
I was thinking I was going to squeak it out this year, but obviously no. And again, as we've said, I'm very grateful. I have my job, my health, and my family are all pretty well. I feel terribly for the people that have been impacted this through loss of life, loss of income, and other pieces like that. So I don't want to be glib, but I do love traveling, and I'm looking forward to the world coming back to normal soon.
Yes, we all are. I can't wait to get back on an airplane again. One of my biggest issues is not flying. It's just the destination. I am myself trying to get out to the Midwest, and there's a huge surge of COVID-19 going on right now. And unfortunately, like you said, my heart just goes out to all the people out there who are dealing with this on a daily basis, whether it's a healthcare worker or you're affected by it and you've lost your family members or your job. It's just a very difficult situation. But, the good news is that vaccine is coming out, and I really, really hope that that's going to have a major impact on the number of positive cases, and we'll all be able to get to the air once again and explore the world. There's a lot out there, and we really, really need to start getting back into it again. Absolutely.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yep. Great. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to mention at all for today as we close out the session today?
No, I don't think so. I really enjoyed the conversation back and forth, getting to know you and then talking more about what's going on in travel. So look forward to continuing the conversation, and I hope that everybody stays safe and healthy and wash your hands, wear your mask and gel.
Absolutely. Yes. I definitely would like to talk to you maybe in a couple of months' time and see how your travel has been. If you've actually done more travel at all, especially, when the immunization does come into effect. And I wish everybody very, very safe travels when they do travel. And again, wear your mask and make sure that you are doing the right thing in terms of social distancing. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit that little bell button so that you're alerted as to every time I post a new video for you. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comment section below. I'm always looking for different ideas on interview topics, and I'm more than welcome to speak to you. Thanks, everybody.